The betrayal. The twin moons of Velrath hung low in the crimson sky, their light shining on a world of metal and greed. In the quiet alleys of the capital city, a young alien woman named Lyra ran barefoot through the rain, her silver hair sticking to her face. Behind her, voices shouted. Heavy boots chased her through the narrow streets. Her heart pounded as she clutched a small crystal pendant, the last thing left from her mother. Lyra had once believed in love. She had believed in Quran, her lover, a soldier with sharp eyes and soft lies. He had promised to protect her, to build a life together once the wars ended. But promises on Velrath were as thin as smoke and as cold as steel. When the rebellion rose and her people fled underground, Quran made his choice. He sold her out to the syndicate, the slavers who bought beauty and pain for the highest bidder. Lyra never saw it coming. One moment she was in his arms, whispering that she loved him. The next, she was stunned by an electric whip and dragged away by armored men. She remembered the sound of Quran's voice as she was taken. Calm, empty, and cruel. Don't blame me, Lyra, he had said. This is business, not love. And then the door closed, and the man she trusted vanished into darkness. Days became weeks. She was locked in metal cages with others, beaten when she refused to bow. The syndicate called her the Silver One, because of her glowing eyes that shimmered when she cried. They found it amusing, the way she still tried to sing softly to calm herself. Her voice, once full of hope, now trembled with fear and hate. Lyra's world became small, a cell, a bowl of water, and the sound of screaming. She counted time by the flicker of the red light above her cell door. Every flicker meant another day gone, another piece of her spirit fading. But she refused to let go completely. Deep inside, a spark still lived, a whisper that said she was not born to die a slave. On the 73rd day, the ship landed on a distant moon called Charon's Cross. It was an open market where broken lives were sold. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of metal. Aliens of all kinds walked around, some in chains, some holding whips, all pretending not to care. Lyra was dragged onto the platform. Her wrists bruised, her dress torn, her wings, once symbols of beauty, clipped and scarred. The auctioneer shouted her description, praising her as if she were a prize. Pure Velrathian blood. Silver eyes. Perfect specimen, he said with a grin. Crowds gathered. Some laughed, some whispered cruel things. Lyra stared at them, silent and proud, refusing to cry. Her heart was broken, but her will was not. In the crowd, she thought she saw a familiar face, dark armor, cruel smirk. Quran. He was there, watching. He nodded to the slaver as if she were still his property. The sight shattered what was left of her heart. For a moment, she wanted to scream, to leap off the platform, to end everything. But something deep inside stopped her. She closed her eyes and whispered, "No, not like this." When the auctioneer lifted the whip to show her obedience, Lyra raised her head and met his gaze. Her eyes glowed again, bright, defiant, alive. The crowd gasped. Even Quran looked uneasy, as if her gaze had burned through his armor. That night, when the market closed, Lyra was thrown into a dark cell beneath the platform. She curled against the cold wall and listened to the rain outside. She wondered if she would ever see the stars again without bars in front of them. Her body was weak, her heart heavier than chains. But her spirit whispered again, "You will survive, Lyra." Far away, in the same system, a human cargo pilot named Ethan Hale was repairing his old freighter. He had heard stories about Charon's Cross, the place where the forgotten were sold. He hated that world, but fate had other plans. Because tomorrow, his ship would land there for a supply run. And without knowing it, his path would cross with the broken girl who still dared to hope. The girl who had been betrayed, tortured, and sold, but not defeated. The girl who would soon learn that even across stars, love could still be real. The night ended with thunder rolling across the alien skies, and Lyra whispering to the storm, "One day, I will be free." The human encounter. The sun of Charon's Cross rose pale and cold, its light barely touching the rusted metal towers that surrounded the slave market. Dust hung in the air like smoke, and the sounds of chains echoed between the walls. In that cruel morning, Lyra sat silently in her cage, her silver eyes half closed, her spirit dim but not gone. She no longer hoped for freedom, only for peace, even if that peace meant the end. But fate, strange and silent, was already walking toward her. A human ship had landed at the docking bay, its engines coughing from overuse. The pilot stepped down. Ethan Hale, tall, calm, with tired eyes and a patch on his jacket that said Frontier Repair Corps. He wasn't a soldier, not a smuggler, just a man trying to earn enough credits to keep his ship alive. But inside his heart lived a strange kind of courage, the kind that didn't roar, only whispered, "Do the right thing." Ethan came to the market to buy engine parts, not slaves. He hated this place, hated the laughter of the traders and the way living beings were priced like tools. But as he walked past the rows of cages, something made him stop. He felt it before he saw it. That quiet pull, that moment when the world holds its breath. In the corner cage sat Lyra, her wings torn, her dress in rags, but her eyes glowed like twin stars trapped in a storm. For a heartbeat, the noise of the market faded, and only those eyes existed. He didn't know her story, didn't know her name, but something inside him whispered, "She's not meant to die here." The trader noticed his pause, grinning like a wolf. "You like her, human? She's a Velrathian, rare, expensive, dangerous," the slaver said. Ethan didn't answer. He only looked at Lyra. She looked back, calm, proud, almost daring him to look away. In that moment, Ethan made his choice. "How much?" he asked quietly. The trader laughed. "Too much for a human mechanic." But Ethan's voice didn't shake. "Name your price." The trader hesitated, sensing something he couldn't read, a man who wouldn't be bullied. Finally, he gave a number that would empty half of Ethan's savings. Ethan nodded without a word, transferring the credits. "Fool," the trader muttered. "You just bought yourself trouble." As the cage opened, Lyra didn't move. The guard shoved her, but she stood tall, her chin lifted. Ethan held out his hand, slow, careful, like offering peace to a wounded bird. For a long second, she stared at it, then at him. Then, silently, she took his hand. The moment her fingers touched his, the world changed. Her breath caught. A spark of warmth spread through her, something she hadn't felt in months. Not pity, not fear, but safety. The first taste of kindness since her world fell apart. They walked through the market, side by side. The crowd stared, some laughed, others whispered. A human freeing a slave was unheard of. Madness, or mercy, or both. Quran's spies saw it too, sending messages across the stars. The name Ethan Hale was marked that day, but he didn't know it yet. At the edge of the market, blaster alarms suddenly rang out. The syndicate guards realized what had happened. A slave had been freed without registration. "Run!" Ethan shouted, pulling Lyra toward the ship. She stumbled, but followed, her chains clanging as they ran through the smoke. Shots fired, metal sparked, explosions lit the air. Lyra's fear turned to adrenaline, her old instincts returning. When a guard blocked their path, she raised her hands, and a pulse of blue light burst from her palms. The man flew back, unconscious. Ethan looked at her in shock, but there was no time to ask. They dashed up the ramp of his freighter as the engines roared to life. The ship lifted into the dusty sky, chased by red laser fire. Inside, alarms screamed, panels flickered, but Ethan's hands were steady on the controls. "Hold on," he shouted. Lyra gripped the seat, watching the ground vanish beneath them. The ship broke through the clouds, escaping into the quiet of space. And then, silence. For a long time, neither spoke. Lyra looked around the small cockpit. Old, worn, but safe. Ethan turned to her and said softly, "You're free now." The words hit her like thunder. "Free," she repeated inside her mind. The word felt strange, unreal, too fragile to believe. She looked at him, confused. "Why?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Why help me?" Ethan looked out the viewport, the stars reflecting in his eyes. "Because no one else would," he said simply. Lyra lowered her gaze, her heart caught between fear and hope. For the first time in so long, someone had done something without wanting anything back. She didn't know this human, didn't trust him yet. But something deep inside whispered. Maybe this was the beginning of the end of her pain. As she fell asleep in the corner of the ship, the engines hummed softly. Ethan covered her with a blanket, his expression unreadable. Outside, the stars drifted past like silent witnesses. The human who didn't believe in heroes had just become one. And the woman who thought love was a lie was about to learn what real love meant. Far away, in the shadows, Karan received the message. His lips curved into a cold smile. So, a human took her, he whispered. Let him keep her for now. The storm wasn't over. It had only begun. Healing and trust. The stars stretched endlessly outside the freighter's window, a sea of silver dust against black silence. For the first time in months, Lyra wasn't in a cage, wasn't chained, wasn't surrounded by cruelty. But freedom, she learned, was strange, quiet, heavy, almost frightening. She sat in the corner of the small ship's medbay, wrapped in a soft gray blanket, her body trembling though the room was warm. Ethan moved quietly, fixing a torn cable near the wall, his hands steady even after the chaos of their escape. He didn't ask questions, didn't speak much, didn't stare at her like others had. He just worked, calm, methodical, gentle. To Lyra, it was the strangest kindness she'd ever known. When she had first woken on the ship, she'd expected cruelty, orders, or worse. Instead, Ethan had given her water, a clean shirt, and space. He didn't touch her chains until she nodded. He didn't even look when she changed the bandages on her bruises. That silence, that respect, confused her more than any kindness could. The hum of the engines became their only conversation. Days passed slowly, each one filled with quiet repairs and cautious glances. Lyra slept on a small bed near the engine room, sometimes waking up in panic. Each time, Ethan would appear at the door, calm voice, soft words. You're safe. It's just a dream. He never crossed the threshold unless she called him. One night, when the ship drifted through a nebula glowing with blue light, she finally spoke more than a few words. Why did you save me? She asked again, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan looked up from his work, wiping his hands on a cloth. He thought for a moment before answering. Because I couldn't walk away, he said quietly. Not again. Again, she whispered. He didn't answer immediately, only stared out at the stars. I once worked with a mining crew, he said slowly. We found refugees hiding under the tunnels. Aliens, like you, running from war. My captain said they were illegal. He turned them in for a reward. Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes cold. I didn't stop him then, he said. I should have. Silence filled the room again, but this time it felt different, not empty, just shared. Lyra looked at him, seeing something she hadn't seen in any human before. Guilt, yes, but also mercy. He wasn't trying to save her to feel like a hero. He was saving her because he couldn't stand to be silent anymore. Later that night, as he checked the navigation panel, Lyra quietly stood behind him. Her voice soft, almost shy. My name is Lyra, she said. He turned slightly, a small smile breaking through his usual calm. Ethan, he said. Ethan Hale. For the first time, their names existed together in the same space. Two strangers connected by a choice that neither could fully explain. Over the next few days, Lyra began to walk around the ship more. She touched the walls, the panels, learning how everything worked. Sometimes she helped Ethan fix small things, like sealing a cracked pipe or cleaning tools. Each time, he'd nod approvingly. You're a fast learner. Her lips would twitch into the smallest smile. It was faint, but real. Still, there were nights when she would wake screaming, her mind trapped in the memory of Karan's betrayal. She'd see the whip, the chains, the cold eyes that once whispered love. Once, she tried to hide the tears, but Ethan found her sitting near the engine, shaking. He didn't say a word, only placed a warm mug of tea beside her and sat nearby. No words, no questions, just quiet company. And somehow, that silence healed more than any apology could. Lyra began to feel something she thought she'd lost. Safety. She started to hum again, soft melodies from her childhood. Ethan would sometimes pause his work, listening quietly. The song spoke of light, freedom, and home. They made the cold metal ship feel alive. One afternoon, as they passed near a small moon, Lyra looked out the window and whispered, You humans, you're strange. Ethan chuckled softly. We get that a lot. You help others even when it hurts you, she said, her voice thoughtful. He shrugged. Maybe that's what keeps us human. She nodded slowly, the corners of her lips lifting again. Her eyes reflected the starlight, and for the first time since her capture, they glowed not from fear, but from hope. But peace never lasts forever. While they floated through quiet space, a signal blinked red on Ethan's console. Unknown transmission detected. Encrypted code. Tracking beacon active. He frowned, trying to jam it, but Lyra's expression froze. She recognized that pulse, that rhythm. It was Karan's. Her heart began to race. She grabbed Ethan's arm, her voice trembling. They found us. Ethan turned sharply, scanning the radar. Ships approaching from behind. Fast. How, he muttered. Lyra's eyes darkened. He never lets go of what he thinks he owns. The stars outside shifted, turning from peaceful light to the red glow of pursuit. Ethan reached for the controls, preparing for a chase. Lyra took a deep breath, her hands glowing faintly with energy she had sworn never to use again. This time, she wouldn't run in silence. This time, she would fight. The human who gave her hope was about to see what a betrayed soul could become. And the galaxy was about to learn, when love meets strength, even fate trembles. The past returns. The comm stars turned red as the alarm lights flashed across the cockpit. Ethan's freighter, the Horizon Dawn, shook as warning signals screamed across the control board. 2 ships approaching fast, Ethan said, gripping the controls tightly. Lyra stood behind him, her breath uneven, her hands glowing faintly. She could feel it, the same cold presence she once felt in Karan's shadow. He had found her. Outside, 2 syndicate gunships slid through the darkness like metal predators. Their lights flashing, their weapons ready. Ethan tried to steer the ship through an asteroid field nearby. Hold on, he muttered. Lyra grabbed the edge of the console as the ship dived sharply. Rocks the size of mountains drifted around them, glowing with blue crystal veins. Blaster fire sliced through the emptiness. Bolts of light struck the ship's hull, shaking it hard. Ethan gritted his teeth, trying to stabilize the engines. They've locked onto us, he said. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but trembling. Let me help. He turned. How? She raised her hands, energy sparking around her palms. Trust me, she whispered. A moment later, the ship's systems flickered. Ethan felt the gravity field shift slightly as Lyra reached into the ship's core with her energy. Her alien power merged with the human technology, bending signals, distorting sensors. The enemy ship's scanners glitched, showing false positions. Ethan's eyes widened. You're jamming them. Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing bright silver. Just keep flying. For a few minutes, the battle turned in their favor. The Horizon Dawn slipped through the asteroids, unseen for brief moments. But Karan's ships were not ordinary hunters. They carried her old chain code, a tracker that pulsed with her biological signature. It could find her anywhere, even across galaxies. Ethan, she said quietly, he's using my blood. He looked at her, confused. Your blood? Lyra's voice cracked. They injected a tracker when I was captured. It binds to the nervous system. Ethan's expression hardened. Then we cut it out. She shook her head. It's not that simple. It's in my spine. He clenched his fists. We'll find another way. The enemy ships fired again. One bolt grazed their wing, sending sparks across the cabin. Ethan pulled the emergency lever, spinning the ship between 2 massive asteroids. The hull groaned. The gravity flickered, but they survived. Lyra stumbled and fell. Ethan rushed to her side, helping her up. You all right? She nodded weakly. I've survived worse, she said with a bitter smile. For a moment, their eyes met. Human and alien, both marked by pain and defiance. It wasn't love yet, but something deeper, understanding. Outside, the asteroid field began to thin, revealing open space again. But freedom was still far. Through the communication channel, a cold, familiar voice echoed. Lyra, it said, smooth and venomous. Did you really think you could hide from me? Her body froze. Ethan glanced at her, his jaw tightening. Who is that? Karan, she whispered, her voice trembling but steady. Her ex-lover, her betrayer, her nightmare. The voice continued. You belong to me, Lyra. Return now, and I might forgive the human for his stupidity. Ethan leaned closer to the comm and spoke, his tone low and sharp. She belongs to no one. Then he cut the transmission. Lyra looked at him, stunned. No one had ever spoken for her like that. Her chest ached, not from fear, but something new, warmth. But the danger wasn't over. The enemy ships were closing in again, their weapons locked. Ethan made a decision. We're heading to the storm. He pointed at a massive cloud of electric energy ahead. A plasma storm. Unstable, deadly, unpredictable. Are you insane? Lyra said. Maybe, he replied. But they won't follow us there. The freighter plunged into the glowing storm. Bolts of blue lightning streaked across space, hitting the shields. The cabin filled with light, and every sound turned into a deafening roar. Ethan fought to keep control as systems shorted out one by one. Lyra closed her eyes and focused, using her power to stabilize the ship's field. Energy flowed through her veins like fire. She screamed, but she didn't stop. After what felt like eternity, the ship burst through the other side of the storm. Silence returned. Heavy, holy silence. The stars were calm again. Behind them, the syndicate ships had vanished, destroyed or lost in the storm's rage. Ethan slumped back in his seat, breathing hard. Lyra collapsed to the floor, exhausted, sparks fading from her hands. He rushed to her, holding her gently. Lyra, he whispered, stay with me. She opened her eyes slowly, smiling faintly. You really are strange, human, she said weakly. You'd risk your life for someone you barely know. He smiled back. Maybe I'm not saving you. Maybe you're saving me. She let out a soft laugh, the first real one since her capture. Outside, the plasma clouds shimmered like ghostly curtains across space. For now, they were safe. But both knew Karan would not stop. And Lyra's secret power had awakened something inside her that could never go back to sleep. As the horizon dawn drifted through the starlit silence, Ethan whispered to himself, we'll find a way to end this. And Lyra, half asleep, replied softly, together. The past had returned to hunt her. But this time, she was not alone. New hope. The storm had passed, leaving the universe calm again. Ethan's freighter, the Horizon Dawn, floated quietly among distant stars, its hull scorched but still alive. Inside, everything smelled of burnt metal and medicine. Lyra lay in the med bay, weak but breathing, her skin pale under the dim lights. For hours, Ethan stayed beside her, repairing the ship and checking her vitals. He didn't sleep, didn't rest, just watched over her like a silent guardian. When her eyes finally opened, he smiled faintly. You're awake, he said softly. Lyra blinked slowly, her voice a whisper. We made it. He nodded, barely. She sat up, pain flashing across her face. Her body felt heavier than before, her energy drained from the storm. Ethan handed her a mug of warm water. Drink, he said, doctor's orders. She laughed weakly. You're not a doctor. He shrugged. You're not wrong. That laughter, soft, broken, yet beautiful, filled the room like sunlight after rain. It reminded Ethan that she wasn't just a survivor, she was alive. And slowly, she was learning to live again. Days passed. Ethan guided the ship toward a hidden outpost, a small human colony built inside an abandoned asteroid. It was called Haven 9, a place where refugees, wanderers, and broken souls came to disappear. He had friends there, old engineers and medics who didn't ask too many questions. When they landed, the docking crew stared for a moment. A human with a Velrathian companion was rare. But Ethan's reputation as a fair trader kept them silent. Lyra stepped out of the ship, breathing the artificial air, feeling her legs shake under gravity again. The light felt strange, but safe. Inside the colony, people smiled cautiously. Children peeked from corners, whispering, "Is she an alien princess?" Lyra smiled softly at them, the kind of smile that said she remembered what innocence used to feel like. For the first time, she felt no eyes of cruelty on her, only curiosity. Maybe this could be home, even if just for a while. At Haven 9, Ethan found a small room for her in the medical bay. Dr. Riva, a kind old woman with cybernetic arms, examined Lyra's back. The tracker is fused deep, Riva said. Removing it could kill her. Ethan frowned. Then what's the alternative? Riva looked at Lyra. A dampener, to block the signal. It won't erase it, but it will hide her. Lyra nodded quietly. Do it. The procedure was painful. Lyra bit her lip to stop herself from crying out. Ethan stood nearby, his hands clenched, wishing he could take her pain away. When it was done, she lay still, sweating, trembling. Riva smiled softly. It's done. They won't find her now. After recovery, Lyra began helping in the outpost. She cleaned, repaired, and assisted in the med bay. Her gentle nature quickly earned everyone's trust. She sang while she worked, quiet songs that floated through the halls like prayers. Even the children started calling her Silver Star. Ethan watched her from afar sometimes. The way she smiled now was different, not forced, not fearful. There was light in it, a spark that made the entire place warmer. One evening, as the colony lights dimmed for night cycle, Lyra found Ethan on the viewing deck. He was staring at the stars, lost in thought. She stood beside him, her voice soft. "You miss your home." He shook his head. "Don't have one." She turned to him. "Then make this one." They stood in silence for a while, the stars reflecting in the glass. Ethan looked at her and said quietly, "You could leave, start over somewhere safe." Lyra smiled faintly. "And go where?" "Every place that wanted me before tried to break me." Her voice softened. "But here, no one owns me." He looked at her, his voice almost a whisper. "No one ever will." For the first time, she reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling, but he didn't pull away. That single touch said what words couldn't: trust, gratitude, maybe even the beginning of something deeper. As days turned to weeks, Haven 9 began to feel alive again. Lyra's presence changed people. Her laughter filled the corridors. Her songs softened the workers' tempers. Even the most tired souls began to smile when she passed. She was healing, and without realizing it, she was healing others too. But in the quiet of space, danger never truly disappears. One night, while checking the comm logs, Ethan noticed something strange. A coded message bouncing through old relay channels. Not from Haven 9, not from any human base. It was faint, but familiar, the Syndicate's encryption. He didn't tell Lyra immediately, but his stomach twisted with dread. Karan hadn't given up. Outside the window, the stars of the Orion Verge flickered faintly. Lyra stood by the glass, unaware of the shadow rising again. She whispered softly, "For the first time, I feel alive." And behind her, Ethan closed his eyes, wishing the peace could last. But both of them knew, hope is never safe for long. The universe always comes to test those who dare to feel free. The final confrontation. The silence of Haven 9 was deep, peaceful, almost sacred. People slept under the hum of artificial lights, believing the storm had passed. But in the shadows beyond the asteroid's shell, danger moved like a ghost. 3 Syndicate ships slipped out of hyperspace, their lights dimmed, their intent clear. Inside the colony, Ethan sat at the command desk, watching the scanner quietly. The faint encrypted signal had returned, stronger this time. He zoomed in, his stomach tightening. "They found us," he whispered under his breath. Before he could alert the guards, the entire outpost shuddered, alarms blaring through the corridors. Lyra woke with a start, her heart racing. The moment the red lights flashed, she knew it was him. She ran to the control room, her hair loose, her eyes burning with fear and fury. Ethan met her halfway, holding her shoulders. "It's the Syndicate." She looked up, whispering, "Karan." Outside, the void erupted with blaster fire. Haven 9's defense turrets activated, but the Syndicate ships were faster, stronger, merciless. Metal walls shook, sparks flew from the ceilings, people screamed and scattered. Ethan grabbed his blaster and handed Lyra a small energy shield. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. She shook her head. "Not this time." They moved through the chaos, lights flickering, smoke filling the halls. Ethan helped a group of colonists toward the escape tunnels. Lyra stopped to heal a wounded guard, her hands glowing soft blue. Her power returned stronger now, guided not by anger but by purpose. Then, a deep voice echoed through the comms. "Lyra," it said, cold and familiar, "come out, or everyone here dies." She froze, her breath catching. Ethan's hand tightened on his weapon. "Ignore him." But she shook her head slowly. "He won't stop, not until I end this." Before Ethan could stop her, she stepped toward the central hangar. Doors opened, revealing the Syndicate troops entering through smoke and fire. And behind them, Karan, clad in dark armor, eyes like ice. He smiled when he saw her. "My beautiful Silver Star," he said mockingly. "You should have stayed mine." Lyra's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "I was never yours," she said, her eyes glowing faintly. Karan laughed. You think this human freed you? He only delayed the inevitable. He turned toward Ethan, sneering. You think love changes what she is? She's property, built for power, not for choice. Ethan raised his weapon. Say one more word. Karan smirked. You can't shoot what you don't understand. He snapped his fingers, and energy soldiers advanced, their weapons charged. Ethan fired, hitting one, then another. Lyra raised her hand, her energy bursting outward in a wave of light. The troops were thrown back, walls cracking from the force. The hangar became a storm of light and fire. Lyra floated slightly off the ground, her hair glowing silver, her wings unfurling for the first time since they were scarred. Karan stepped forward, his armor crackling with energy. You were born to obey, he said. It's your nature. Lyra's voice echoed, soft but fierce. No, she said. I was born to choose. They clashed, energy against energy. Bolts of light collided, shaking the floor. Ethan ducked behind a barrier, trying to help without getting caught in the blast. He fired at the control panels, triggering the emergency shields to trap Karan's men. Lyra, he shouted, now. Lyra gathered her strength, her body trembling as light poured from her hands. She felt the pain, the fear, the memories of every scream, every betrayal. But she also felt Ethan, his courage, his quiet faith. She focused all of it into one final surge. Her eyes blazed like twin stars. A shockwave exploded outward, engulfing Karan in a sphere of blinding white. When the light faded, Karan was on his knees, his armor shattered. He looked up at her, disbelief in his eyes. You would kill me, for a human? Lyra stepped closer, tears glimmering on her cheeks. No, she said softly. I'm freeing myself from you. She turned away, letting him fall to the floor as the energy faded from her hands. Ethan ran to her, catching her before she collapsed. Her pulse was weak, but her eyes were alive. You did it, he whispered. She smiled faintly. We did it. Around them, the alarms silenced, the fires dimmed. The surviving colonists emerged from hiding, staring in awe at the woman who had saved them. Dr. Riva ran in, helping stabilize Lyra. Karan lay motionless, his ship drifting dead in space. For the first time, the ghost of her past was gone. As the medbay lights flickered softly, Ethan sat beside her, holding her hand. You're safe now, he said, his voice breaking with relief. She opened her eyes slowly, whispering, No, Ethan, we're free now. Outside, the remains of the storm glowed in the distance. The galaxy was quiet again, but inside their hearts, something new had begun. Not fear, not loss, but love born from courage. The woman who was once betrayed, tortured, and sold, had finally found peace in the arms of the human who refused to let her fall. And in that fragile silence, hope was reborn. The new beginning. The war was over, at least for them. Haven 9 floated quietly among the stars, half in ruin, half in rebirth. Days turned to weeks, and slowly, life returned to its corridors. Repairs were made, gardens regrew under artificial light, and laughter began to echo again. Lyra walked slowly through the rebuilt medical wing. Her silver hair shimmered under the warm glow of the lamps, her movements calm, graceful, alive. She still carried faint scars, but they no longer defined her. She had learned something greater, that freedom wasn't the absence of pain, it was the courage to live despite it. Children ran past her, smiling and waving, calling her Miss Silver Star. She smiled back, her heart light, her wings, though still damaged, now unfolded gently behind her. Each feather glowed faintly, a symbol of rebirth. She had once been a captive, but now she was a teacher. Every day, she helped the young, human, alien, hybrid, learn medicine, empathy, and strength. From the window of the command deck, Ethan watched her. He stood with his tool belt still on, oil stains on his sleeves, but his eyes were warm. He had seen galaxies burn, had fought through storms, but nothing amazed him more than watching Lyra laugh again. She turned and noticed him, and for a moment, neither spoke. They didn't need words anymore. Their silence was enough. Later that night, they sat together on the colony's observation deck. Outside, twin suns rose slowly over a nearby planet, painting the void in gold and crimson. Lyra leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. For a long time, they just watched the light spread across the stars. No chains, no alarms, no fear, only the sound of their breathing, steady and real. "You ever think about Earth?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes, when I fix an engine that refuses to live." She chuckled quietly. "You'd hate it there, too many rules." He grinned. "You'd love it, though. Open skies, oceans, music everywhere." Her voice softened. "Maybe one day." There was a pause, the kind of silence that felt full instead of empty. Then she whispered, "Do you think people like us can really start over?" Ethan turned to her, his voice low but certain. "We already have." She looked at him, and for the first time, her smile reached her eyes completely. No shadows, no ghosts, only light. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small object, her mother's pendant, the one she had lost when she was taken. Her eyes widened as he placed it gently in her palm. "I found it in the wreckage," he said. "Figured it belonged where it started." Tears filled her eyes as she clutched it to her chest. "It's all I had left of home," she whispered. He looked at her, his tone soft. "Then maybe now, it can remind you of where you're going." Outside, ships from other colonies began to arrive, carrying supplies and refugees. Haven 9 had become something new, a sanctuary, a symbol of peace built by those who had known pain. And at its heart stood a human and an alien, proof that compassion could survive even the darkest galaxies. In the following months, Lyra and Ethan built a small dwelling on the nearby moon of Arion. The world was calm, covered in blue grass and silver rivers that glowed under twin moons. They grew food, repaired old machines, and watched the stars without fear. Sometimes, traders visited, bringing stories from across the systems. Some spoke of the Silver Angel and the human pilot, a legend of hope spreading from world to world. Lyra would laugh softly every time she heard it. "I was no angel," she'd say. Ethan would smile. "Maybe not, but you gave the universe wings again." One evening, as dusk fell over the glowing fields, Lyra stood outside their home, holding the pendant in her hands. The wind whispered through the silver grass, and she closed her eyes, breathing deeply. For the first time, her heart felt light, truly light. Ethan walked up beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She looked up at him and whispered, "I used to think love was a trap." He smiled gently. "Maybe it was, until you found the right one." She leaned into him, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for showing me what it really means." He squeezed her hand. "No, Lyra, thank you for reminding me what being human means." As the twin moons rose, their light painted them in silver and gold. The night was quiet, the stars endless, and the universe, for once, at peace. Lyra looked up at the sky and whispered softly, "I was betrayed, tortured, and sold, but I was never truly broken." She turned to Ethan and smiled. "Because in the heart of one human, I found everything I had lost: love, freedom, and home." And as the light of dawn touched their faces, the story of Lyra and Ethan became more than survival. It became a promise that even in the darkest corners of space, love will always find its way.